Hello, everybody. Good to see you. Welcome. The new opening music is Folk Devils by Rooftop Revolutionary, Eleanor Goldfield's old band. I hope you'll check it out. Anyway, thanks for being here. Click thumbs up, click share, all those good things. Got a lot to get into today. Sorry, Eleanor Goldfield's not here, but she will be back next week. We're gonna get into some more about Iran. The Treasury Secretary basically admits exactly what we've done to Iran and then tries to claim 8 seconds later that it's something else. More on ICE killing 2 more people. Some on Venezuela. Got a lot on that. All of this coming up right now. Sorry, that was a convoluted, kind of vague intro, but thanks for being here. Thanks for joining me as we continue to try and bring the truth to the world despite crazy suppression, crazy censorship. We're going to keep doing it. We're going to keep fighting, as someone, I can't remember who it was, says that fairly often. But here is Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent's statement on, or some of it, on Iran that he did, I think, last night. And I'll point it out. Within 8 seconds, he admits what the U.S. empire is involved in, but then acts like he didn't just say it, kind of.
My message today is to the Iranian leadership on behalf of the people of Iran who cannot speak for themselves.
Okay, so first you'll notice that apparently the U.S. Treasury Secretary speaks for the Iranian people. Holy shit! Who knew? The Iranian people elected Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent as their spokesperson. That's crazy. That is unbelievable. But thank goodness they have a spokesperson out there, the Treasury Secretary of the United States of America. Also, I feel like if the Iranian people were to elect someone to speak for them, they probably would elect someone who pronounces Iran correctly. But what do I know? Why would they do that? No, of course they want to be called Iranians, or whatever he said.
Last March, we predicted that President Trump's maximum pressure campaign against the Iranian regime would accelerate an economic collapse.
Okay, think about what he just said before we keep going. He just said Trump maximum pressure campaign, which means full-scale economic war. That's what it is. It is a full-scale economic war against Iran. He says, we did that, and we predicted it would precipitate, meaning cause, economic collapse. So he, in those few words, said, we created economic war against Iran. We predicted economic collapse due to our economic war. So the U.S. did this. He just said it. They just admitted it. All you have to do if you want to find out what Trump and his parasitic goons are doing, listen to them. They'll tell you most of the time. They'll tell you what they're doing. He just said it. Economic war to create economic collapse. And it's worked. Well, let's see what he says 2 seconds later. Does he say, yay, the U.S. did this to Iran? Man, that's awful that we would do that to Iran.
Since then, our sanctions efforts have been effective in slashing oil exports and cutting revenue.
Okay, so he just basically said it again with a few more specifics. Our sanctions, our economic war, has succeeded in greatly harming the Iranian economy.
The currency and living conditions are in free fall.
Now he tells you what that looks like. The currency and living conditions are in free fall. We have created economic war against Iran, and we have destroyed the living conditions of the average people in Iran. He said it straight up. There you go. You don't need to guess. We don't need to read mainstream media bullshit articles about how the Iranian government, blah, blah, blah. Nope, just said it. Economic war has caused the living conditions of the average Iranian to suck. Okay.
The early warning signs are already flashing in the Iranian economy. The regime continues to egregiously mismanage its economic resources with additional subsidies and price controls.
He then seems to completely reverse what he just said and says the Iranian government is mismanaging the economy. Good sir, I think you just said that the U.S. government's economic war is what's causing the harm to the Iranian economy. You just said that. We've played a total of 15 seconds, and you want us to believe that, first of all, yay. You know what? This has something to do with Donald Trump. The fact, first of all, that Donald Trump often says the quiet part loud. But beyond that, Donald Trump wants to make sure he gets credit for everything that happens. And so, therefore, he often will say things that normally the U.S. empire, our collapsing, parasitic, vampiric empire, used to cover up, will normally cover up. And he says it because he wants to brag about it. So normally you would see these type of statements from the U.S. government, and they'd say the Iranian government is causing all this harm to the Iranian people, and that would be the end of the statement. Now you have Trump admitting that it's the U.S. that caused this harm to the Iranian people because he wants credit. He doesn't want it to be that the Iranian government did it wrong. He wants it to be, I did it right. I crushed the Iranian economy. Now, of course, that's the truth. The U.S. economic war is what's causing harm in Iran. It's not mismanagement of resources. It can't be both. It can't be that the economic war has had these great impacts. Oh, never mind. The mismanagement has had these great impacts. Thank you, Joseph, for supporting the show. And yes, Greg Stoker, who works for Mint Press, is running for Congress. That is true. Just announced. Greg Stoker basically took over my spot after I left Mint Press, creating videos for them, and has done great work there. I don't really know him, but he does good work. Anyway, let's keep going with Scott Pecent.
The central bank is broke and printing money. Hyperinflation is next.
So now he's just detailing what the ramifications are of U.S. economic war and what you can't get from mainstream media, absolutely, and even from Donald Trump, who says the quiet part loud, and what you can't even seem to get from most independent media outlets. I don't know why these indie outlets that often do a lot of great work refuse to dig slightly deeper, like just slightly. But this also comes down to the petrodollar, right? The U.S. dollar is precipitated on fossil fuels being sold in U.S. dollars. So which are the biggest countries that are selling oil outside of U.S. dollars? Oh, Iran. Oh, Syria, as of, up until a few months ago. Oh, Iraq, until we invaded, killed 1 million people, and decapitated their leader. Oh, Libya, until we invaded and bayoneted their leader in the streets. Those are the main ones. So do you see any theme?
Rather than building a prosperous Iran, the regime has chosen to squander what remains of the nation's oil revenues on nuclear weapons development, missiles, and terrorist proxies around the world.
And of course, half of that's bullshit, and half of it is, if you had the U.S. empire at your throat, would you not be preparing for war? Even though Iran has shown pretty impressive amount of restraint as the U.S. assassinated their general just out of the blue. Their top general just blew him up in Iraq, which was Iraq supposed to be an ally of ours somehow, or was to some degree, because we had put in a puppet government. Impressive restraint from Iran. Iran also, when they've struck our military bases in the area of Iran, they always give us warning because they're not trying to spark off a nuclear war between Russia and the United States. So they'll usually tell the United States, hey, we're doing this little tit for tat. Be ready. It's coming. But, let's remember that the truly despicable thing here is that Iran decided to, first of all, put their country over top our oil. Always offensive. No matter how many countries do it, it's still offensive. Don't put your fucking country over our oil. Okay. Step one. Step two, Iran decided to put their country in the middle of all of our military bases. Like, if you look at a map of U.S. military bases all around Iran. So what were they thinking? Like, why Why put your country between all our military bases over our oil? Those are just dick moves. So what did they think was going to happen? Now, I've done plenty of coverage, so I'm not going to spend too long on it, on these protests in Iran, which apparently have been decreasing, petering out. But yeah, it doesn't mean, when I talk about how this is a regime change op, it's a U.S. and Mossad-led regime change op. It's very obvious if you just study the news that's not covered in your mainstream media for like 8 seconds, you'll figure it out. But a lot of people want to run around pretending it's just a grassroots people standing up. Oh, really? Why do some of them have Kalashnikovs? Is that the grassroots people standing up in Iran? Anyway, here's one video of, I don't know if there is any. Yeah, I'm cutting off the sound because it's just music. But just showing these are the protesters, but you see them with a lot of firearms and a lot of firepower. These are not these are the peaceful protesters that you're hearing from our mainstream media. Lot of guns. They've killed a lot of people. They kill a lot of innocent unarmed security guards. They've lynched a lot of people. They've set fire to a lot of things. And we know that Mossad. So I covered all this in a Substack article as well. I'll put up the link again. Free to go read there. reallycamp.substack.com. But Mossad has admitted that they're on the ground in Iran right now alongside the protesters. And as I pointed out yesterday, what do you think they're doing there? What do you think Mossad is doing on the ground in Iran? Do you think they're just holding up strongly worded signs? We're so angry. Do you think they're just supplying Sharpies and poster board to people to have their peaceful protests? I'm gonna go with no. I'm gonna go with they might be doing something else. So anyway, and then just one more. So Mossad has admitted that they're on the ground there. And this was posted by Asal Rod, which she has a great Twitter account. But she said this type of thing is openly reported in Israel, and yet U.S. or Western mainstream media act like it doesn't exist. And here is an Israeli media outlet. We reported tonight on Channel 14, foreign actors are arming the protesters in Iran with live firearms, which is the reason for the hundreds of regime personnel killed. Everyone is free to guess who is behind it. And Mossad has admitted they're on the ground. That's from Israeli media. Like, you can actually get this stuff. Israeli media has openly asked and talked about the fact that Israel knew about October 7th a year in advance. Israeli media has openly talked about the fact that Netanyahu refuses to allow an investigation into October 7th because he knows what it will show. Like, Israeli media will show these things, will air these things. Israeli media has showed the clips of IDF soldiers saying they were told to stand down in the first hours of October 7th, or that they were told to not do their normal lookouts on October 7th and not watch the gate, the whatever fence between Gaza and Israel. All those things covered to some degree in Israeli media. But if you were to say it on U.S. media, they would act like you're a lunatic and they would never invite you back. That'd be the last time that you were on one of our media outlets. What did I just do? There we go. Okay, so I want to move on to ICE, and I've also done a fair amount of coverage on the protest against ICE, the killing of Renee Good, but we now have information on 2 more murders by ICE in recent weeks. And the latest episode of Unredacted tonight, which I think I'm going to play most of it at the end of this live stream, but I talk about the number of police killings is way greater than we actually know or are told. It is crazy amount, but same goes for ICE. And anyway, here is yet another person. This is from Washington Post. Medical examiner believes death of man in ICE custody was homicide. I know you're shocked. See, like, you guys get it. So when you hear someone died in ICE custody, you go, oh, they probably killed that person. Whereas I think a lot of Americans kind of have not woken up. And so they hear guy dies in ICE custody and they go, oh, must have had a heart attack. Must have choked on a bugle. Remember bugles? So they need to be told these type of things like, no, the medical examiner says he was likely murdered. When U.S. ICE announced the January 3rd death of detainee Geraldo Lunas Campos, he's almost got my last name, at a Texas, that's the Latin American version of my last name, Campos, at a Texas detention camp. The agency said staff observed him in distress. An employee of El Paso County's Office of Medical Examiner told Campos's daughter this week the office is likely to classify the death as a homicide. In the recording of the conversation, which the daughter shared, the employee said a doctor there is listing the preliminary cause of death as asphyxiation due to neck and chest compression. And this is something that I talk about in the Unredacted Tonight episode, that lots of times when police or ICE or law enforcement in general murder someone, they then write it down as asphyxiation, right? You strangle someone to death. Oh, they asphyxiated. They weren't strangled to death. Thank you, VC Nick, for supporting the show. Really appreciate it. And so that is how you end up with a lot of killings by police not being written down as killings by police. Lunas Campos was a 55-year-old Cuban immigrant, died following a struggle with detention staff, according to an eyewitness. So they basically leaned on this guy's chest or maybe kneeled on his chest till he died. Got a lot of similarities to George Floyd. So there's another murder this month by ICE, and here's another one killed by ICE. Family of man killed by off-duty ICE agent in LA demands charges. The ache will never go away. The family and friends of a Los Angeles man who was killed by an off-duty ICE officer over the holidays, so again, these are the last few weeks, are urging local officials to arrest and prosecute the federal agent. Keith Porter, 43-year-old father of two, was fatally shot by an ICE officer on New Year's Eve. LA Police Department spokesperson said after the incident, Porter had fired gunshots into the air, but of course, they always say those things. So, I mean, you can't trust anything the police tell you when they've murdered someone. When they've murdered someone, they will do anything they need to try and make sure that they are not held accountable. And again, as covered in this episode of Unredacted Tonight, there's been 3 police that have served time for murdering someone over 15 years. 3 officers actually served time for murder. Like, were convicted of murdering someone and served time for it. 3 out of 43,000 or something people murdered by police. It's unfathomable. So this is a 43-year-old father of 2 murdered by ICE. And that was over the holidays. Thank you, Inferior Penguin, for... I don't think you're Inferior Penguin. I think you are awesome for gifting memberships to people. Very cool. And thank you for supporting the show. And then also in the ongoing battle against ICE, I mean, I suppose the touch point is Minneapolis, but obviously this is going on nationwide. ICE has arrested or black bagged 4 members of the Oglala Sioux tribe. And here's a quick clip from Chase Iron Eyes in I'm guessing this was filmed in North Dakota, but it doesn't actually say. And I interviewed him several years ago, back during the Standing Rock protests. But yeah.
So these are 5 Oglala Sioux tribal council members, and they have 4. There was 4 tribal members who were picked up by ICE in a community called Little Earth right here in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and one of them has been released, but they couldn't locate the other 3.
Never mind. I said he's in North Dakota because I think that's where he still lives. It's where he lived at the time when I interviewed him, but they're in Minneapolis, St. Paul, obviously.
So the council members here they're all elected officials of the Oglala Sioux tribe, and they gained access to the facility and they couldn't find their 3 tribal members. They're not. They claim that they're not classifying them by their nationality, which tribal members are also citizens of the United States.
I hope you also realize how darkly hysterical it is to have immigration black bagging Native Americans. I hope that's not lost on you. How fucking unhinged that is, and how if it weren't real, it could be like the plot of some comedy movie of immigration control grabbing up the people that actually are from this land, like a long time ago from this land, and putting them in prison because they're immigrants.
Since 1924, there's nobody more American than American Indians, but they were unable to find them here today, and so they're going to continue on. They got some contact information. They love the fact that you're here, that everybody's here, and they're going to be giving out tribal IDs to their tribal members who are in Minneapolis, St. Paul, at the American Indian Center down on Franklin Avenue. But I just want to say thank you to everyone that's here. Stay vigilant and stay assertive, stay constructive. We're in unprecedented times, the way that I see it. So
this is it's not lost on us that President Trump's favorite president, he has the painting on the wall, is Andrew Jackson.
That's the father of the Indian Removal Act. The fact that we're here at Fort Snelling, this is a concentration camp, a prison for Dakota people. Abraham Lincoln ordered the largest mass execution in American history. 38 plus 2 Dakota people were hung here, right here. And so it's not lost on us at all. In fact, it seems like a deliberate jab at the soul of our people, but we also have relatives. They don't understand that we are America. How could you possibly target Native Americans and with immigration and customs enforcement officers and then imprison us? That is impossible. It's legally impossible to do that.
So there you go from that interview on the Oglala tribe that have been disappeared. People are trying to find them. Some of them they have found, but this is also a common tactic of ICE, is to make it very hard for people who are not have not been locked up to find those they're trying to find and free. Straight up fascist playbook, right? You black bag people, you make it hard to find them. You don't, so that their legal rights can't actually be executed because the lawyers can't find them. They're not given their phone call usually. It's basically everything to make it as difficult as possible for you to actually have your rights. Of course, all of this is anti-American, not to mention rounding up Native Americans, but what that even means, anti-American, is just bullshit. But this idea that, Trump is the real America or whatever, it's all garbage. And I know you guys get that. ICE is just a fascist force on our streets. And let's not forget, ICE was only created in 2003. So the idea that the United States could not exist without ICE is so laughably stupid. It was only created in 2003, and now it's taking over as basically Trump's fascist boots on the ground, even more so than just standard police officers. This is a new large investigation by ProPublica on the use by ICE of illegal banned chokeholds and other moves. Thank you, Inferior Penguin, again for supporting the show. Really appreciate it. And this article goes in depth on 40 cases where ICE has used these illegal chokeholds, etc. Of course, the whole existence of ICE should be illegal, but on top of that, they're using techniques that get people killed, not just shooting people, but like kneeling on a neck killed George Floyd. It sounds like pressing on the chest is what killed the person I just talked about a moment ago. And these things are supposedly banned. They're not supposed to use these things, but they are largely unaccountable. These officers also, unlike your average police officer, most of them, have no identification usually on them and cover their faces so that you can't even find out who it is that's violating your rights. But anyway, if you want to read these 40 examples, 40 cases of ICE agents using banned chokeholds and other moves designed to cut off breathing, that's at ProPublica. And yeah, just I think it's good to know all of the ways that these people are breaking the law. Again, you know, there's different levels of illegal. Like, I think ICE should be illegal, but in our country, that agency is not illegal. However, these chokeholds actually are supposed to be illegal. This is from tracereports.org. Shows you like how many on immigration. It shows you how many court cases are ongoing. Here's the amount of all the immigrants that have been rounded up. Here's the amount that have been rounded up based on illegal activity, okay? Just alleged illegal activity, not convicted, just alleged. Of all the immigrants that have been tackled, black bag, in prison, handcuffed, all those things over the past many months, how many do you think does it have to do with alleged criminal behavior? The answer is 1.6%. 1.6%. So when you argue with your right-wing friend or whoever, and they say these immigrants are doing illegal shit, they're beating people up, they're stealing, they're cheating, they're whatever, maybe you can let them know that of the arrests, 1.6% have even been accused of illegal criminal activity. 1.6%. Let's see what else in these numbers is in it. There's a lot of interesting things in these numbers, but cases that are in the immigration backlog is 3.4 million immigration cases in backlog. Meaning, so this is why Trump has so far not been able to deport all that many people. I mean, he's deported a lot of people, but it's actually still less than Biden has deported, but he has arrested far more. Because where are they keeping them? Well, that's why they're opening these internment camps, these concentration camps. They're reopening the Japanese internment camps from World War II, which is considered one of the most horrific, dark periods of U.S. history, but we're doing it again. And why? Well, because they can't actually deport a lot of these people until they give them some sort of court case, even if it's 60 seconds. And there's a backlog of 3.4 million people cases that's of September of last year. 3.4 million. 2.3 million are awaiting asylum hearings. 500,000 immigrants have been ordered deported by immigration judges this year. I think that's 2025, not this year. And yeah, so a lot of interesting numbers there, but I think the most important ones are the fact that essentially none of these people have been accused of criminal activity, and the fact that there are 3.5 million backlog cases of people in these concentration camps right now. By the way, while we're earlier I mentioned saying the quiet part. The Trump and his goons like to say the quiet part loud. Literally, the Border Patrol commander, do their outfits not look a little like certain outfits you might recall? What comes to mind when you look at this image? Nothing SS related, would you think? Nothing, certainly not Nazis, right? Holy shit, dude. Who did Hugo Boss also make these outfits? Because they're really trying to look like Hitlerian. Anyway, this is Ken Klebenstein. He gets a lot of these leaked documents, and he has memos showing that immigration agents are getting very worried about the ICE backlash, which is great. So thank you, Soon Heaven, for reporting the show. Does YouTube get 40%? I thought it was a little less. I thought it was less than that, but anyway, maybe they've changed the numbers. But here's from Ken Klebenstein. In the wake of an ICE officer's killing of Renee Good, the Department of Homeland Security is rolling out Operation Metro Surge. So that's the big battles you've been seeing ongoing in Minneapolis. Hundreds of additional federal forces. DHS is privately divided and hesitant about the latest deployments. According to documents leaked to me, not only is the department seeking volunteers for the apparently unpopular mission, it is urging its agents to maintain a low profile and comply with use of force policies. Basically, the leaked memo shows they're trying to actually get ICE to tone it down a little. Like, could you keep a low profile and not just like slam people into sidewalks because they pulled out their cell phone to film you or called you a pig? Because technically they're allowed to film you, and also you're kind of a pig. Thank you, Lapsed Lawyer, for supporting the show. DHS sought volunteers to deploy to Minneapolis, in part due to opposition within the ranks, according to Border Patrol agents, meaning even ICE agents don't want to be doing this, at least a certain percentage of them. They're like having trouble finding volunteers to go to Minneapolis to deal with the protests, which also speaks to how successful these protests have been. The ICE is having trouble getting people to go there. It is hard. The other thing that's been very, very effective, which I think is a great nonviolent tactic, is there's been hotels telling ICE they can't stay there. There's been restaurants saying they don't serve ICE, putting up posters saying they don't serve ICE. I don't think they mean in their drinks. I think they mean something else. They could get kind of clever with it if it's a restaurant. I think it could say like, we love our drinks warm, no ice, something like that in the window. I feel like that. Because, if you can do your part to kind of slow down fascism and also get a chuckle at the same time, very important, very important. But anyway, so they've been making it difficult for ICE to just do those average daily things. Like, these guys have to go piss somewhere. They don't normally piss in the bushes. Some of them might. So then they walk into restaurants and stores and things. And I saw a video the other day of people just like filming them and just wandering, like watching them as they go through the store, which they seem annoyed by. Good. Be annoyed. Be annoyed that you're committing fascism. It should not be fun. It should not be a hero's job. It should be a job of a shithead. So let's, make them feel like shitheads at minimum. Here's another leaked memo from Ken Klebenstein that ICE internally is telling the ICE agents, so DHS is telling the ICE agents to de-escalate. Obviously, that is the opposite of what the officers have done murdering Renee Good and in other examples. But internally, they are telling them to chill the fuck out. The DHS in Washington warned about the dangers of confronting suspects in vehicles, according to a November memo. For safe and effective vehicle extractions, de-escalation is key. Or just, here's an idea, don't do it. Like Renee Good, if you watch the video, was waving ICE agents by her car. You could have just left her alone. She didn't do anything to you. She followed you, which is what people should be doing. They should be watching you to see whether you are actually giving people their rights, and generally you're not. The memo, titled Guidance on Safe and Legally Compliant Vehicle Extraction Operations, is referring to the same operation at the heart of Renee Good's killing, a vehicle extraction operation. That's what ICE agents were trying to carry out to bolster its view that protesters are weaponizing vehicles. So they're trying to, part of it is that DHS is trying to go after more of these vehicles because they don't like that they're being followed. I brought you on the last live stream, I brought you kind of a detailed description of what these ride-alongs look like, where volunteers follow ICE around their neighborhoods to basically make them uncomfortable. And a lot of times ICE will just leave the neighborhood rather than be followed. So that meaning it wins, it works. But DHS is trying to decrease those. So they're trying to act like, oh my God, they're using vehicles as a weapon. No, they're not actually using vehicles as a weapon. They're just following you around, which should be a legal activity. Ken Klebenstein says, I've looked around and astoundingly, Homeland Security has no formal definition or policy for vehicle extraction. So when they say you should follow the rules on vehicle extraction, they don't actually have any. He then says, so much for training its officers on dangerous situations that they might face. In her hasty press conference following Good's death, Secretary Kristi Noem justified the shooting by claiming our officer followed his training. There was no training. Did exactly what he'd been taught to do in the situation. No, he didn't. Murder the person is not what he's taught to do in the situation. And in fact, if that was what he was trained to do, then that's also illegal training. You should not be training your agents to murder innocent, unarmed people that are trying to drive out of your way. Sources tell me that immigration authorities have been worried for some time about officer and public safety in vehicle extractions and were aware that something like the Good shooting was likely to happen eventually. Done incorrectly, the leaked memo suggests vehicle extractions are a dangerous practice. Oh, you think? Do you think? And then he has some still frames of the murder of Renee Good and showing what the officers are doing. She tries to leave and the lunatic pulls out a gun and shoots her basically straight through the window. Now compare what Ross did, that's Renee Good's killer. Compare what he did to Homeland Security's guidance memo, which instructs officers safely block the target vehicle with other vehicles, ensuring that officers and agents avoid unsafe positioning. Basically, if you are doing a vehicle extraction, then you should only do it when that vehicle is jammed in by other vehicles so that there's no risk of driving away. But that's not what was going on here. Klebenstein says that Ross did not heed this doesn't mean he'll be arrested or even found responsible. ICE's use of force policy all but rubber stamps these killings. So, yeah, Klebenstein's point is that, no, he didn't actually follow his training, but of course, that's not going to stop him from not being held accountable at all, of course. And even if some crazy court did convict him, Trump would promptly pardon him. So, but there's some leaked memos from inside DHS and what their thinking is. To me, it shows that the protesters are, to some degree, winning. The ICE is seeming overwhelmed and scared, and they can't even get volunteers to go to Minneapolis or other touch points. So, to me, that seems like people are uniting and actually having an impact. All right, let's jump now to some more insanity. Well, actually, before I get to Venezuela and more, please, everybody, click subscribe, do all those things. But I am crazy suppressed on YouTube, on Facebook, a lot of these places. So the number one thing you can do is subscribe for free at Substack, reallycamp.substack.com. And then the number two thing you can do is actually become a paying member for the whopping cost of one beer a month. If you can just throw me one beer a month, if you think this content is worth one beer a month, I give you 3 free hours of live streams a week. So 12, I think if I'm doing that math right, hold on, let me get out a pen and paper. So 12 hours of free live streams plus unredacted tonight. So there's another 2 hours. So 14 free hours a month. I also give you usually 2 columns a week. So that's 8 a month. So 8 free columns, 14 free hours of live stream. And I basically ask For all of that, can you throw me a beer? Could you do that? Because that's how I'm able to keep the show going. Lots of other channels you may know of that are kind of in the same realm as the stuff I do, in the same area. They are not suppressed for a variety of reasons, and they can therefore make crazy amounts of money, thousands and thousands of dollars from ad revenue on YouTube. That is not me. I am the opposite of that. So basically, to keep my stuff going, it just comes down to whether you become members. And, you know, if I had to say, like, if you could only become a member of some of these independent media sources, maybe become a member of the ones that are not getting $1 million a year from ad revenue. That'd be like, because then you're having more impact if you throw a beer to me than if you throw a beer to some of these other channels. So I hope you'll join up. There's 3 places to join up. You can do reallycamp.substack.com. You can do patreon.com/leecamp. Or if you want to be part of my locals community, you can do leecamp.net. That'll take you straight to locals, and you can join up there. But yeah, each of those supports my show, and it's the only way I keep going. So thank you. For those of you who are already members, I know a lot of you. Oh yeah, and I just did something I don't normally do. Actually, it's my first filmed stand-up comedy in 5 years or more. I just put out a half-hour stand-up comedy. I performed in New York City, and you can watch it. And if you become a member, you can watch it on Substack, Patreon, or Locals. And hopefully you'll enjoy that. But all for the cost of a beer. All right. Let's keep it going. This is pretty hilarious. So, as most of you already know, Maria Corina Machado is the opposition, not even leader, but I guess in some ways leader of the opposition in Venezuela. She's not very liked by Venezuelans. She doesn't have much power in Venezuela at all. She's a complete U.S. plant, has been for years. And she was given the Nobel Peace Prize for asking for the United States to bomb Venezuela. She was given the Nobel Peace Prize. She then, just yesterday, gave the Peace Prize to Donald Trump because Donald Trump was very butthurt that he didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts to murder lots of people around the world. The Nobel Peace Prize, if it didn't happen when they gave it to Henry Kissinger, the Nobel Peace Prize is a mockery of itself. It is the inverted version of itself. But anyway, Donald Trump was so upset he didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize. And some people are saying that the reason he hasn't declared Corina Machado as the president of Venezuela, even though no one ever voted for her, but some people are saying the reason he didn't is simply because she didn't refuse to accept the Nobel Peace Prize and instead say they should give it to Trump. That's why he's so upset. So she gave it to him. She went to the White House and did a little photo op giving the plaque to Donald Trump. Probably had a new plaque made saying that had been given to Donald Trump when it hadn't. And Donald Trump standing there smiling with the Nobel Peace Prize he didn't get. And anyway, here she is, Corina Machado on Fox News.
In spite of the Nobel Prize Committee saying that you couldn't transfer your Nobel Prize to anyone, especially President Trump, you did today. Why did you do that?
Because he deserves it.
You got that? Because he deserves it.
And it was a very emotional moment. I decided to present the Nobel Peace Prize medal on behalf of the people of Venezuela.
I gave the Nobel Peace Prize to the man who just invaded, bombed your country and kidnapped your president and imprisoned your president and has been bombing your fishermen and killed 100 people in your country. I just gave him the Nobel Peace Prize because he deserves it, and I did it on behalf of the Venezuelan people. Holy shit. As a comedian, I don't know what to do with that. I don't I feel bad for outlets like The Onion. Like, a lot of what I say to you is fairly serious, and then I throw in a joke here. If you're an outlet like The Onion and it's just pure jokes, there's nothing else, I don't know what you do with that. How do you beat that? How do you trump that? Is what I want to know. Also, as you know, Trump had meetings with oil companies to talk with them on how best to steal Venezuela's oil. Donald Trump's first Venezuela oil sale goes to one of his mega donors companies. Big surprise, pure corruption, pure and full frontal corruption. Just full frontal dick flopping out corruption. John Addison, a senior trader at Vital, who donated about $6 million to Trump's super PAC, was involved in his company's efforts to secure a $250 million deal for Venezuelan crude oil. And by the way, this oil that Trump is selling has been not just stolen in that Trump kidnapped Maduro, but they're literally landing on the tankers and stealing the tankers of oil in the ocean. And then Trump sells that oil that he's stolen from Venezuela, like full on stolen, like not deal made with gun to their head, which is what's happening right now. Their vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, is making deals with Trump because basically there's a giant gun to her head. She doesn't have a choice but to make oil deals with Trump so that the country's just not endlessly bombed. But I'm not even talking about that kind of theft. I'm talking straight up paratroopers landing on the deck of the tankers, stealing the oil, and then selling it around the world. It is full, like I said, full frontal mafia behavior. There is nothing that's not mafia about the U.S. government now. And speaking of Delcy Rodriguez, the new president of Venezuela, or acting, I guess, president of Venezuela, being forced to make deals with the United States with a gun to her head, the CIA director has met with Venezuela's interim president in Caracas. So the CIA literally has gone down to Venezuela to meet with her. This is after the CIA, of course, being a big part of the murder of all of those people in Caracas and the kidnapping of Maduro. I mean, could you not have a more perfect analogy for mafia? Literally went in. This would be like the mafia coming in to rival gang. And well, not to say that Maduro's a gang, but I'm just giving an analogy. But going in, killing the leader, and then saying to the next person, make a deal with us. And the next person going, well, are you going to kill me? Well, not if you make a deal with us. Oh, okay, then I'll make a deal. Well, does it count then? Does the signature really matter if you got a gun to your head? It's straight up mafia behavior. Okay, so now this next one's a little bit of good news, kind of good news in a way, even though it's more illegal activity by Donald Trump and his corrupt crew. This is a video by Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, and what it shows is that the U.S. empire ruling elite are tearing apart. It's being torn apart, that ruling elite. Now, that can mean that the power is then solidified under a strongman like Donald Trump, but it also is what happens in a waning, collapsing empire. You see even the rulers stop being able to cooperate, even though you'd think they're out for the same thing. They both want capitalism. They both, by both, I mean both sides, but they all want to keep exploiting the workers. They all want to keep exploiting the materials around the world. So you'd think perfect allies, but not for Donald Trump. So you have Donald Trump and the Federal Reserve at odds. And this is the message from the other day from the Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell.
Good evening. On Friday, the Department of Justice served the Federal Reserve with grand jury subpoenas, threatening a criminal indictment related to my testimony before the Senate Banking Committee last June. That testimony concerned in part a multi-year project to renovate historic Federal Reserve office buildings. I have deep respect for the rule of law and for accountability in our democracy. No one, certainly not the chair of the Federal Reserve, is above the law. But this unprecedented action should be seen in the broader context of the administration's threats and ongoing pressure. This new threat is not about my testimony last June or about the renovation of the Federal Reserve buildings. It is not about Congress's oversight role. The Fed, through testimony and other public disclosures, made every effort to keep Congress informed about the renovation project. Those are pretexts. The threat of criminal charges is a consequence of the Federal Reserve setting interest rates based on our best assessment of what will serve the public, rather than following the preferences of the president.
So he's saying that, big shocker, Donald Trump is using the Department of Justice, weaponizing the Department of Justice against the Federal Reserve because he's angry the Federal Reserve has not decreased interest rates. And this is the ruling elite going at each other's throats. So you literally have the head of the Federal Reserve saying that he's being persecuted in a political witch hunt, which he is. That does not make him a good guy. But the Fed, like I said, these guys are on the same team, right? This is the ruling elite. These are the tippity top of the capitalist ruling class. These are the people that want to make sure we are all exploited at the same level, that we never get into some sort of get to some sort of future of evolving beyond wage slavery, evolving to something better than capitalism, evolving to a world where we live in a post-scarcity world already. It's just that all of the resources are allotted to a tiny, tiny group of individuals. We could actually get beyond that, where no one around this entire globe fears for food or clothing or safety or a roof over their head. These guys are all in alignment that they don't want that. They don't want to evolve past capital. They want to keep exploiting all of us. But even within that tiny group, they are kind of at war with each other. And this is Donald Trump going at the head of the Federal Reserve. So, in many ways, I say just grab your popcorn and enjoy the show. But of course, it also has to do with a fascist, hungry strongman trying to purging his perceived political enemies. So there is that aspect of it. But this is the ruling elite at each other's throats. Some quick news stories before I play the newest episode of Unredacted tonight. I'm going to play the whole thing at the end of this live stream because I know some of you have seen it, and you're welcome to not watch it again. If you see, I think you should watch the second time. I mean, what's wrong with you? Why would you not? But I think many of you have not seen it, so I'm going to go ahead and play it. And for those of you who have not seen it, you are not welcome to go about your lives. You must sit and watch the new episode of Unredacted tonight. And I'm going to play it in just a few minutes rather than end the live stream. But I did want to add these stories in here that, again, this is the ruling elite at each other's throats. Many are saying this could be the end of NATO, which would be a wonderful thing for the world. NATO is a war-making group. It does nothing but create wars and get countries just obliterated like Libya and thrown into just competing warlords. That was NATO. Kosovo, etc. They put us on the brink of nuclear war. They fund and arm proxy wars like in Ukraine. So NATO is a horrible thing. Many are saying this could be the end of NATO because you literally have NATO countries putting troops in Greenland to fight off or scare off the United States from trying to steal Greenland, from trying to steal and pillage Greenland. It's from NPR. European troops arrive in Greenland. Now, they're trying to claim, so that they don't have to say, yeah, we're just getting ready to go to war with Trump. They claim it's just to bolster Greenland's security. So basically, they're responding to Trump's lies that the reason he needs to take over Greenland is to secure it, which is laughable. But the EU, France, Germany, Norway, Sweden, sending troops to Greenland basically to try and scare off Trump from stealing Greenland. But this is, I challenge someone to point to another time that members of NATO have put military troops in a location to fight to possibly fight with each other, because that in many ways that would seem like the end of NATO. Because also the whole idea of NATO is an attack on one. Now, like I said, they are a war-making entity. It's not just an attack on, but that's how it's designed. An attack on one is an attack on all. Well, if Trump attacks NATO troops in Greenland, then NATO would be on both sides of that. NATO would have to defend against Trump and help Trump. So you just have NATO at war with itself, which would be, again, interesting to watch. Everybody get the popcorn. You ready for that? One more quick news story that I did not cover a few days ago when it was first reported. Trump administration is attempting to block $10 billion of, it's in here, it's called welfare. In the article, it's called welfare, but it's basically money that goes to hungry children in the United States, money that goes to children that need medical help in the United States. Trump is freezing or trying to freeze $10 billion of that money. Right now, just the other day, a court said he could not do that, but he generally goes ahead and does things anyway, and then hopes to take it all the way to the Supreme Court where they will side with him. But this is how soulless. Like, if you were to think, even if you hate government, if you were to think, what are the things that government is useful for or should be used for, it would be things like this. It would be money going to children that are hungry. It would be money going to children that need medical help. It would be money going to those who are the least among us, have the least among us, and are struggling. That would be like top of the list of things that you might hope government would do. But Trump and his parasites are so soulless, so sociopathic, so psychopathic, so unhinged, so vampiric that he just wants to pry away any money that would go to help almost anyone, because help is not, it means nothing to him. It's about enriching the rich. That is the only thing that matters to him. And yes, he's directed this effort towards Democratic states, which is also funny because he hates Democratic states that vote Democratic because he hates the Democrats, right? He wants all Republicans. But do you have any idea how many people in Democratic states voted for him? Millions. I'm originally from Virginia. You know how many people in Virginia, even though it might have gone for, I assume it went for Kamala, but you know how many people in Virginia voted for Donald Trump? Dude, you go to the hills of Virginia, it is MAGA signs as far as the eye can see. Millions of people in Democratic, quote unquote, states voted for Donald Trump, and he is making sure that their children don't get any money to help feed them. Like, it's so remarkably repulsive, but it's also punishment towards his own voters. It's unbelievable. Anyway, so far there's a hold on his hold. He's trying to hold back the billions of dollars. There's a judge has issued a hold on his hold, saying he can't do that. But I'm sure he'll do it anyway, and then it will continue to work its way through the courts. Okay, I am going to now play the latest episode of Unredacted Tonight. I know some of you have seen it. You're obviously welcome to step away from our show right now, but I'm going to go ahead and hit play on this. And thank you guys so much for joining me. I'll be back Monday, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. For those of you who are new, I do these live streams 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, except I do every other Wednesday because some Wednesdays I do government secrets. So this is also a podcast. It's called Moment of Clarity on most podcast platforms. It's called Lee Camp Show on Spotify because they banned my old podcast. So if you are in a car or something and you want to catch up on the episodes, I hope you can do it that way with the podcasts. And what else? Check out Unredacted Night. I hope you will join up at reallycamp.substack.com and become a member there, even if you want to do it for free. Subscribe there because you are far more likely to hear about stuff on my Substack than from YouTube. YouTube will not alert you to this stuff. Okay. Have a great weekend. Keep fighting. And here is the latest episode of Unredacted Tonight. On this episode of Unredacted Tonight, the invasion of Venezuela and kidnapping of their president is not new behavior by the U.S. government. In fact, we've done that type of thing more times than Donald Trump has bought his own groceries. Literally, it has a guy. Plus, the recent ICE killing of an innocent, unarmed mother of three has forced many Americans to look into just how often U.S. law enforcement murders innocent people. Hint, they do it more than Donald Trump has wiped his own ass. Literally, he has a guy. All that and more coming up right now. Welcome to Unredacted Tonight. I'm Lee Camp. I'm about to go through every time the U.S. has cooed a Latin American country since the mid-1900s, and it's less pretty than Margaret Thatcher. Currently, like how she looks right now. It's easy to feel like Donald Trump's unhinged, brazen, war criminal, drunk, Gary Busey on a bad day behavior is unlike anything the United States has vomited forth before. But sadly, it's not. Sadly, the U.S. has been behaving like a global mafia hitman with dementia for decades. The only difference is that most U.S. cooings and attempted cooings in Latin America have been somewhat subtle, or rather the U.S. involvement has been somewhat subtle. But Donald Trump's about as subtle as a colonoscopy on an Amtrak train while it passes an explosion at a fertilizer plant. An exception to that subtlety doctrine was George H.W. Bush's 1989 invasion of Panama, in which Manuel Noriega was kidnapped by U.S. forces and roughly 1,000 people were killed, and some neighborhoods were made to look like, quote, little Hiroshimas. And it was all done in the name of peace and democracy. You know, the U.S. doesn't stand for peace. It stands for pieces. We blow things into pieces. We're tearing the natural world into pieces. We're ripping international law into pieces. It's a kind of peace. Anyway, in general, U.S. presidents in recent years have preferred to manipulate, dominate, crush, and control Latin American countries with a mixture of economic war, lawfare, coups, bribery, threats, unorthodox plane landings into a mountain at a great speed. So let's make clear just how common the U.S. empire's murderous, illegal, belligerent behavior is with the following lighthearted list of times we've cooed Latin American countries since 1950. Keep in mind, this list is not exhaustive and does not include attempted coups or attempted assassinations, except when they're particularly hilarious. To add all attempted coups, I would need to clear my schedule for the next 3 weeks, and I can't do that because I have swim lessons on Tuesdays. Okay, next week, I get to take off the SpongeBob water wings. Progress. The following list also doesn't include lawfare coups, such as was done to Lula da Silva in Brazil, which have been the most common form of U.S.-backed regime change ops over the past 20 years. And finally, my list here only encompasses Latin America since 1950. So with the rules laid out like sex at an orgy, put on your rain boots, kids. Don't forget your safe word, for God's sakes. And let's get started. 1954, Guatemala, President Jacobo Arbenz overthrown in CIA Operation PB Success. Why? Well, Arbenz and his predecessor brought in a minimum wage, universal voting rights, land reforms that gave property to all landless peasants. The U.S. psychopaths can't have that. If the peasants have land, they stop being peasants. And then who are the rich gonna feel better then? The whole system breaks down. And who did the U.S. install after the coup? Military dictator Carlos Castillo Armas. 1960s, 70s, 80s, Cuba. The U.S. tried to assassinate Fidel Castro only 634 times and invaded the country during the Bay of Pigs literally 634 times. They tried exploding cigars, poisoned scuba suits, exploding seashells. It was a fucking Charlie Chaplin flick. I'm surprised they didn't shoot those chattering teeth, out of like a wrist rocket or something. 1964, Brazil. President João Goulart was couped in a U.S. military-supported operation codenamed Brother Sam. What was he doing that offended the U.S.? He opened voting to essentially everyone. He taxed corporations, giving the money to the people of Brazil. He increased education funding and implemented land reforms to give land to those who needed it. What a villain. I hope they chopped him to bits and then fed him to the sharks and then fed those sharks to the alligators. Education funding? How do psychopaths even come up with this shit? 1963, Dominican Republic, President Juan Bosch. 1970, Chile, General Rene Schneider. U.S. supported kidnapping and assassination. Why did the U.S. want Schneider dead? Simply because he was getting in the way of the coup the CIA wanted to commit against socialist President Salvador Allende, who the U.S. and co-conspirators ultimately couped and suicided 3 years later on September 11th, 1973. That's the OG September 11th. So in order to stop the socialist Chile, they got not one, but two of the country's leaders killed, and then ushered in nearly 20 years of oppression, torture, death, and dumpster fire by General Augusto Pinochet. Not to be confused with Pinotage, a lovely red wine with a smoky, bramble, and earthy tones, and sometimes just a hint of fruit, such as bananas. What are we talking about? But who cares if there were 20 years of murders following our cooing of Allende? To the U.S. empire, that matters less than Hakeem Jeffries. All that matters to the U.S. empire is whether Pinochet stopped socialism and let U.S. companies in, and sure he did. 1971, Bolivia, President Juan Jose Torres, U.S.-supported coup. 1976, Argentina, President Isabel Perón, U.S.-backed coup. 1976, Bolivia, former President Juan Jose Torres, except this time, U.S.-supported assassination. 1981, Panama, General Omar Torrijos died in a suspicious plane crash after an ongoing fight with Washington, including a tiff over who exactly owns the Panama Canal, a crucial trade route for the U.S. Unfortunately, the people in Panama had the nerve to put our canal in their country. President Carter had signed a transfer of the canal back to Panama in 1977, but it wasn't supposed to go into full effect until 1999. However, then Reagan gets into office and he is nonplussed. So Torrijos' plane goes into the side of a mountain, and the Reaganites support a new leader for Panama, a man named General Manuel Noriega, who we now know was a long-running paid CIA informant and facilitator. However, a funny thing happened to Noriega while he was Panama's dictator. He started to dislike the U.S., and he had inside knowledge of CIA shit that had gone down, like Torrijos' plane crash. So he was a real problem. During some of that time, the CIA was working with Noriega. Guess who was head of the CIA? George H.W. Bush. Then, when the U.S. decided to invade Panama in 1989, kill 1,000 people, kidnap Noriega, guess who was president of the United States? George H.W. Bush. Seems like he had a closer relationship with Noriega than he had with his own children. Apparently, the insane 1989 invasion of Panama, called Operation Just Cause, a good one, was also the first time the military got to use their brand new night vision devices in a nighttime raid. It's important to remember that a lot of America's war games are done for money and power, but a small bit of it is also being able to kill people with brand new toys. So cool. But look, I can see in the dark. Let's go kill some people in the dark. 1981, Ecuador, President Jaime Roldos, another suspicious plane crash that killed an enemy of the U.S. ruling parasites. Did you know the number one cause of airplane engine trouble in the 1980s was having a socialist on board? Yeah, or even just a social-ish on board. Roldos wasn't even socialist, but he advocated for human rights, social welfare, labor protections, and a more equitable distribution of natural wealth, which is close enough to cause engine trouble on a small plane. This has nothing to do with America. It was well known at the time that advocating for the redistribution of wealth interferes with fuel lines on small twin engine planes. Roldo's choosing to get on that plane is like someone choosing to drive on icy roads. You know, it's dangerous. It's your own choice. 1983, Grenada, Prime Minister Maurice Bishop. U.S. invasion and removal of Bishop in Operation Urgent Fury. It feels like the entirety of U.S. history is Operation Urgent Fury, doesn't it? 1980s, Nicaragua, America's sustained covert regime change war against the Sandinista government. 2002, Venezuela, President Hugo Chavez was kidnapped by U.S.-backed military forces for less than 48 hours before being restored to power. You see, 20 years ago, the U.S. made a mistake in their coupping of Venezuela. They allowed Chavez to be kidnapped to a Venezuelan military base. This meant that the Chavez loyal forces could free him and put him back in charge. So this time, a few weeks ago, the U.S. kidnapped Maduro to the U.S. I've always said that being an effective global empire with no morality or ethics or soul, it depends on learning from your mistakes. 2004, Haiti. President Jean-Bertrand Aristide was kidnapped and flown to Africa on a U.S. military plane. Man, do we love kidnapping presidents. I love it. Some people like fly fishing or knitting or bestiality or whatever, but the U.S. empire loves kidnapping democratically elected presidents and also killing some. So there's that. 2009, Honduras, President Manuel Zelaya was kidnapped and couped in a U.S.-backed effort. And of course, 2026, Venezuela President Nicolas Maduro, kidnapped by the U.S. and put in a U.S. prison. But it was a peaceful kidnapping. Only about 100 people killed. That's nothing. Trump does that when he goes out to eat at an Olive Garden. Hopefully you know by now the real reason that Trump is waging war with Venezuela. It, of course, has nothing to do with drugs, nothing to do with bringing democracy, nothing to do with Maduro being a bad guy. Instead, it has everything to do with the petrodollar. Venezuela pumping oil outside of the U.S. dollar is an existential threat to the sociopaths who lord over our country. And that's why the first thing Trump did once he had kidnapped Maduro is meet with dozens of oil and gas execs to talk about pillaging Venezuela. The horror show Donald Trump and Marco Rubio have scripted for us it's totally a horror show. Absolutely. However, it's not a new horror show. You see, Trump is not a bad apple, okay? He is a representation of a long-running and absolute moral rot of the U.S. empire. And we must keep fighting against it. But I'll be goddamned if I'm not going to have some pinotage while we do it, okay? I'm drinking this thing. As you know by now, ICE agents in Minneapolis murdered an innocent woman named Renee Good, who posed no threat to them. In fact, ironically, she was on the scene as a legal observer, unarmed people who monitor police and ICE to make sure they're respecting people's legal rights. Meanwhile, ICE agents claim they were fearing for their life, which is something ICE agents say after they kill someone. While it's very rare for police to kill a legal observer and somewhat rare for them to kill a white woman, killings by law enforcement are less rare to find than a piece of furniture J.D. Vance has had sexual relations with. In fact, U.S. police murdered a mere 1,292 people last year. That's only one person murdered every 7 hours of every single day of the year. That's like nothing. And you might believe that's not much as long as you don't look at other countries. Denmark and Switzerland often have 0 killings by police per year. Like they don't kill anyone. How do they even stay in practice? How do they know which way to point the gun or anything? Iceland has only had 1 murder by a police officer in its history. I mean, you kind of know they're not going to do anything violent because they're dressed in those sexy Halloween versions of cop outfits. What are you guys doing there? Surprised they don't have furry pink handcuffs. This means U.S. police murder more people in the first few minutes of each new year than Icelandic cops have murdered ever. So I will admit, this sounds kind of bad for America. Almost as bad as that Super Bowl halftime show starring Rod Stewart and the Wiggles. But it's not actually that bad. Far worse, actually. A few years ago, the Department of Justice released a report about the numbers of people who die in law enforcement custody. And they said they have no idea how many people die in law enforcement custody. Oh, great. So that 1,292 number is just the victims we actually bothered to count? Well, I always say the only thing harming American exceptionalism is truth. If we could just keep truth at bay, we'll be fine. The report, authored by the Office of the Attorney General, offers an unprecedented accounting of the government's neglect in tracking deaths in U.S. prisons and jails and at the hands of police. It found the federal government has failed to count thousands of deaths in law enforcement custody over the past 3 years. Thousands? How do you fail to track death? There's a body laying there. He's not exactly going at a breakneck speed. In fact, his neck is already broken. Dead guy? No. What dead guy? No, that's just it's a pile of clothes. Sure, there's a dead guy in it, but inside the clothes. But that's just how it showed up from the vintage store. Okay, that donated it to us. They always leave the people inside. You know, because there's no reason to waste all that plastic with a mannequin and all that shit. No, you just prop up the corpse in the window. You display it that way, right? We got to think about the environment here. So if the government has failed to count a lot of deaths, exactly how many are we talking here? According to a large scope study by the highly respected Lancet Medical Journal, police killings in America have been undercounted by more than half over the past 4 decades, according to a new study. Half. Jesus. About 55% of fatal encounters with the police between 1980 and 2018 were listed as another cause of death. Another cause of death? Like what? Taser to face syndrome? Yeah. He came down with a bad case of boot throat. Yep. Lot of folks in prison picking up the boot throat. They are usually the ones talking back to us or saying negative things, commenting on my haircut. Yeah, it's very, very contagious. Yeah. So if police killings are undercounted by 55%, how many would that be during, say, last year? Well, if 1,292 is the official count, then the actual number is 2,871 people murdered by police in America last year. Good God. The damn Icelanders must just be laughing at us, which due to their cultural differences sounds like this. Just laughing at us over a cold pint of walrus blood, munching on pickled reindeer hooves or whatever they do. 2,871 means U.S. police murder a person every 3 hours of every day. How does this happen? How can such an extreme undercount of police killings take place? Well, for one thing, death certificates do not generally ask whether police were involved. So if a police officer chokes someone to death, the certificate might just say asphyxiation. It likely will not say roided up asshole Steve with the badge. Yeah, he just strangled this guy because he happened to look like the guy banging Steve's 20-year-old daughter. It's crazy. No, it doesn't say that. It says asphyxiation. And if the victim was tased to death, certificate might read heart attack brought on by excess electricity. There are many examples. In Aurora, Colorado, 23-year-old Elijah McLean's death a few years ago was initially ruled undetermined before it was revealed he had been choked, handcuffed, and injected with ketamine. Maybe those things were the cause of his death. Maybe it was the horse tranquilizers you pumped him full of. Do you think that had something to do with it? The most famous example is probably George Floyd, the murder that started the massive Black Lives Matter protests. The police and the county medical examiner first pointed to drug use and underlying health conditions as the cause of death. Then the entire world saw the video and realized, oh, maybe it had to do with the cop kneeling on him until he died. Maybe that's what contributed to his death. And although it won't bring any of these victims back, this all begs the question, how many cops are convicted of murder after they murder someone? What do you think, fair viewer? Do you think it's 10%? No, that's too high. Let's say 1%. How about 1%? Meaning 99% of the time, police get away with their murders unscathed. Does that sound right? Well, NBC News, in their first moment of actual journalism since the end of Prohibition, looked at all the police killings over a 15-year period. They found only 3 officers have been convicted of murder during this period, 2005 to 2019, and seen their convictions stand. 3 officers. That's less than the number of cops who are vegan Buddhists doing their police investigating by reading the auras emanating from a collection of magenta crystals. So if we assume, as the Lancet Medical Journal just told us, that there's roughly 2,871 police killings a year, a likely undercount, times 15 years, that's 43,065 people killed by cops. Then 3 convictions would be 0.007%. 1 conviction of a police officer for every 14,355 murders. I don't know what to say to that. I'm just going to stare awkwardly at this camera for a little while. The policing system in the United States is a runaway fascist death squad, to put it in polite terms. There's no accountability. There's no oversight. And when they kill someone, they don't even need to write down that they killed someone. They just jot down cause of death, lack of oxygen. Victim should have spent more time finding oxygen than jaywalking. It's fucking crazy. I blame Iceland. All right, you can hear them laughing at us. Clack, 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 clack. And these are your headlines from the future. Coming up in one day, you'll read Trump administration posthumously charges Renee Good with willful obstruction of fascism. Let's see what the Supreme Court says about. Never mind. Coming up in February, we'll find out RFK Jr. replaces everyone at NIH with one of those singing big mouth bass you hang on your wall. If he were doing that in the White House, I'd be all for it. Coming up in 10 days, we'll hear Trump violently kidnaps Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, mostly out of boredom. You say drunk on power. I say drunk on awesome. That's the show. Do you feel like this show was worth the cost of 1 coffee? I hope so. I hope you'll join up at realleecamp.substack.com or patreon.com/leecamp and keep this show going. I can't do it without you. Thank you for the support. Okay, I'll see you next Thursday. The revolution will have laughter. Keep fighting.